Welcome to the next chapter of Stone Cold. As you will see, I am trying something new with the audio of this chapter. Let me know in the comments what you think. Now let's get into it. Chapter 5.
I can be unpredictable.
Even as the words came out of her mouth, Snow knew they weren't true, though she wanted to believe that by saying them out loud somehow would make them true.
I can be unpredictable.
She said more loudly and sternly. Nope, they still felt wrong as they came out. She looked around the dingy motel room. Shadow lay wide-eyed on the bed. She had to bribe the manager $100 to let him stay with her. Finding a pet-friendly place at a moment's notice had turned out harder than she had expected. She looked around the cheap room. It had a double bed that took up most of the space with small melamine nightstands on either side. Near the window that looked over the parking lot was a small, cheap dining table with matching chairs, clearly not for fine dining. A television hung from the wall in the corner, its red standby button glowing at her. She got up and went to the bathroom. The tiles had been painted nicotine yellow. The mirror above the basin had black circles forming beneath its surface, but it reflected enough for her to stare into it. She looked into her own dark coffee brown eyes. She hesitated for a moment. What was she trying to do? Muster up some kind of courage.
I can be unpredictable.
Her words were barely a whisper.
I'm sure that Detective Noakes is fabulously unpredictable.
She shouted back to the room for Shadow to hear. She washed her hands and grabbed the hand towel that hung on a silver ring beside the basin, trying to ignore her indecision about whether it was beige or just that stained, and walked back to the room where Shadow still lay, unmoving. He was clearly unhappy about this change in routine. He hates any changes to routine, just like Snow.
Detective Noakes is courageous in all the right ways,
she said to Shadow as she dropped the towel on the bedstand and walked over to the window, opening the curtains just a crack so that she could peek out.
She would never get herself tangled in a stupid mess like this.
The motel's neon pink sign hurt her eyes as it flashed on and off, its pink glow illuminating the police vehicle parked under it. She stared at it for a moment. It was too dark for her to see inside and see the face of who was watching over her. She wondered how she got herself into this mess in the first place. Shirley hadn't actually done anything wrong, but somehow now there seems to be a killer who has her in his sights. She tried to think about what she could have done. Were there any unusual people she had met, or unusual cases she had worked on? She stood at the window for the longest time, trying to think of what might have happened that would result in her hiding in a sleazy motel room. Why had Theresa May insisted on meeting with her? And who was the strange man that had escorted her to some kind of zombie wrestling match? She felt dirty. She looked at the dim light shining through the open bathroom door. Taking a shower in there might make her feel worse. She took a deep breath, closed the curtain, and turned to sit on the bottom of the bed next to Shadow. She found herself wishing that Noakes was there with them. As much as she annoyed her, she also managed to make her feel safe. Snow closed her eyelids and felt her eyes burning as she choked back some tears. She wanted to be home and safe in her own bed, in her own home. She squeezed her eyes closed in an attempt to stop the tears, but one managed to escape and tickled her cheek as it rolled down. A loud banging on the door startled her. She wiped the tear from her cheek and stared at it. Shadow growled and stared with her. She slowly got up and took a shaky step towards it. A voice shouted from the other side. The sudden sound of it made her jump.
It's me. Open up.
The familiar voice of Detective Noakes. She could feel the rush of relief wash over her, and she almost ran the 5 steps it took to get there. She opened the door and was greeted by Noakes and a rather large pizza box.
Thought you might be hungry. Vegetarian, right?
Noakes said as she stood in the doorway. Snow hadn't even thought about eating, but suddenly it felt like a void had formed in her stomach. She nodded and stepped aside to let Noakes through. She stopped and looked at Snow.
Have you been crying?
She asked as she moved to place the pizza and a 6-pack of beer on the small table that sat in front of the window.
No.
Snow lied.
Allergies.
Noakes lifted her eyebrow, clearly not believing her, and flung over the pizza box. Triple cheese. Snow suddenly felt ravenous as the smell filled the room. She sat down on one of the cheap metal and melamine chairs that matched the table. It complained under her, creaking as she reached out and grabbed a slice of hot cheese pizza. Noakes sat on the other chair, opened an ice-cold bottle of beer, and handed it to Snow before opening one for herself. Snow gulped down the malt liquid, and Noakes stared at her.
I would have thought you were more of a wine girl,
she said. Snow swallowed her last bite of a pizza slice.
I'm actually more of a vodka girl, but there's nothing like a cold beer with some pizza.
I agree.
Noakes smiled. Shadow had started to relax and close his eyes. Snow watched him for a moment, feeling a little envious, but grateful to have Noakes there. Even Shadow was more relaxed. She made him feel safe too.
I come bearing good news too,
Noakes said as she grabbed a slice of the pizza and proceeded to take a bite, making sure to take her time and not share the good news straight away.
So, what is the good news?
Snow asked anxiously, taking a sip of her beer. Noakes smiled, the kind of smile that makes you feel that everything is going to be okay.
We managed to identify the guy from your Zombie Wars footage.
That is good news.
Snow felt immense relief flood over her. She suddenly felt lighter and grabbed another slice of pizza, the metal chair protesting underneath her.
We have some uniforms going to pick him up in the morning. By this time tomorrow, you could be sleeping in your own bed again,
Noakes said, still smiling. Snow closed her eyes, imagining the comfort of being back in her own bed.
I can't wait,
she said. She opened her eyes and Noakes gestured to open another beer for her. She nodded. Why not? She was enjoying this little adventure and a motel room with Noakes and Shadow.
So, who is he?
She tried to ask casually before taking a sip of beer, already feeling a little lightheaded from the first one that she had managed to drink down so quickly.
He is a local special effects artist,
Noakes said, reaching for another slice of pizza.
He does all that fancy horror makeup and fake body parts, apparently for TV shows,
she said, taking a bite of pizza.
One of our uniforms recognized him from a recent DUI arrest, which apparently hasn't been his first,
Noakes said while chewing. Snow could feel her forehead wrinkle as she frowned. She never had anything to do with television, and neither did any of her clients.
I wonder why me?
She finally asked.
Why did he pick me to torment like this?
Noakes chased her bite of pizza down with a sip of beer.
That's exactly what we are going to find out tomorrow.
She sat and looked at Snow for a moment. Some concern seemed to cross over her face.
I think you should get some rest.
Then she added, almost appearing to feel sorry for Snow.
I will come fetch you in the morning, and I will ask the captain if you can watch the interview.
With that, she got up and, leaving the pizza and beer, she walked over to the door, suddenly looking tired herself.
Thank you.
Snow said.
For everything. I really appreciate it.
She smiled in an effort to express how grateful she felt. Noakes opened the door and stepped out.
Just doing my job, ma'am,
she said before smiling and nodding, closing the door behind her. Snow stood in silence for a moment, staring at the door.
Ma'am,
she said out loud, wincing her face.